He's working with the IRS. Don't throw things. He's a very nice guy. We've been working with him for quite some time now. And he's got a very, very interesting story to tell. So please welcome Jan.
Thank you. I've been working with EFI code. I've also been working with EFI. We'll get back to that. I'm VP at UFO, which is the agency for IT and development, and I'm responsible for development. This is a new construction until 1st of January. I was working in the ministry with one of the focus projects that we have been forced to do because we had some breakdowns in the system. Let's start. We will, on Monday, move to this facility where we will be, all of the IT and development agency will be as 55 square meters. We intend to be around 1,600 to 2,000 people. So it's 90% an IT organization. So from a public perspective, it will be the biggest IT organization, and also with some of the most comprehensive problems that you will see in the public sector. As this tax has code running, which is written before we sent rockets to the moon in the 60s. Maybe you believe that that's not possible, but that's actually the case. So we have code that's more than 50 years old. Main systems at Skat is around 90 mainframes containing a neighborhood of 50 million lines of code. And we will have to renew that in the next 10 years. That is a massive task. I'm not going to talk much about that. I'm primarily going to talk about what we did from when I started, and I started in March 16. We started development on the project I'm going to talk about in September 16, so it's a little more than 1.5 years. When I call this from zero to safe, it's because when we were in September 16, we had nothing. We had no people, we had no culture, we had no processes, we had nothing. We had a system that was failing. And sorry but the system was called EFI. And that may say that one's EFI code did not write the code for EFI, someone else did. The process was that we had these, and everybody living in Denmark know that Skat is very often in the press, not necessarily for good stories, and we had a number of stories, and the two stories I've been working on, the two problems I've been working on, one of them is debt collection. In 2015, two reports from the state attorney and from Accenture stated that in the system there was corrupted data and probably that there was unlawful case processing taking place. So that basically, when you are in a public sector, means that you have to step back, stop working, can't do nothing. So we had to do something very fast. And then I can also say that we also have another problem with ejendomsvurdering or property relation processes, and I'm also involved in that project. But it has equally problems in the public sector. So there was an urgent need for a new plan, and the processes was like this. And the major point, it's not necessarily very important that you understand everything here, but most important, I think that we had a tender processes. Anyone involved in public tender processes, it's terrible. Terrible. I've been now from the private sector, and that was really cultural shock for me. We had a tender process from March 16. 3 suppliers was pre-selected, and I didn't take part in the pre-selection. I probably wouldn't have chosen the same thing again. But we ended up with Netcompany as a supplier on an Oracle platform, and then I think that most of the impression here was that we were going to get a new platform. That's not necessarily the case. It's a beer with logic platform. We have batch jobs that is written in COBOL, so some of the platform is more than 20 years old. It's not a new platform, that we just been started working on. Then we work in 3 phases, and we just started on phase 3 here, 1st of January. We tend to keep the plans we have. We are right now 50 million below budget. Anyone can think of another public development projects going below budgets on time? So all good stuff. We will end here mid 18, but there will also be a development people working on the project after that. Right now we have in the neighborhood of 25 development teams working on this, and that's the case. When we started the project, and as you already can see, this is a management presentation. If you talk to the managers in Skat, they would say that I'm techie guys. If you talk to some of the people on the floor, they would say I'm a manager. But I consider myself a little bit of both, and I like to spend time walking the floor. I think it has to be both. From 0 to safe, we had nothing in September 16. So we had to set up some processes, and what we did was that we focused on 3 different areas, and these were redoing the governance model, and this is actually still what we do. I'm not going to go into that. I don't think that's interesting. And then we split this in which takes care of the projects and development cycle. Down here we did basic Scrum. On top of it, we also have a project model, and we still have that. It's very difficult to us because of the way of doing things in the ministry to avoid having a project model, which is basically a Prince2 model. I know that people like the guys at SimCorp say that project leaders doesn't necessarily have anything to do with SAFE, and I do agree with that. But we still need them to report on stuff. So this was the setup, and then we had a massive trying to educate people on how to do basic Scrum, how to do agile development. People were coming in from all different, some from Skat, some were hiring, some were consultants, and their starting point was very, very different. So we did a lot of what you could call education. The approach to education from my side is that we do it very lightweight. What we do is generally that we make some very generic set of slideware, and the purpose for the slides are to enable communication. So we don't necessarily write anything down or do any long documents or write processes. Everything we do is documented in Jira Conference, and we don't do anything beyond those 2 platforms. So that's a little bit in line with what you were talking about. I'm gonna go into a few things on how we do Devops, because that's the topic for today. But not that much. The first thing I'd like to talk about is how we do releases. So we've been on a massive journey. If you go back here, you can see that we, in May last year, started doing SAFE, and I can a little bit back to that, but right now SAFE is sort of the guidelines for everything that we do concerning development, also to some extent management, and SAFE has been adopted by the whole organization, so that's what we're going to build on from now I'll get back to that. Releasing. I do believe in that you should release often. I also believe that you have to automate all your processes. I do believe that you have to automate your testing. We're not there quite yet. We've been working massively on it. Some of it with a little bit of help from, a lot of help from Difficult, but we are getting there. We had 2 releases in December. We will have 1 here in January, and the plan is from February we will release after each sprint. It's not that it's not that we drop code every day, but we will drop code every 2 weeks. One of the problems we have is that this basically everybody, which means around 200 developers, work on one application, and so far we have had 1 branch, and that sort of complicates things a little bit. We sort of coded ourselves out of that, so we think we from now on can have multiple branches, but that's still testing. Then we also work a lot on Docker to be able to have more environments. Squeezing the largest web logic platform down to Docker has been very, very big challenge. We've worked on that for quite a number of months. It's in testing with our testers, so we're getting there. Now we are, in the beginning we actually started it as a proof of concept with the company, and the result of the proof of concept was that this is not possible, we can't do it. But then we hired the ethical guys, so we get a commercial for you, and kept on working on it, and now we are at a point where it says it works. We still have a few things, issues we have to address, but we're getting there. Testers are using it, and the difference from having a number of environments to have an infinite number of environments means that you can work radically different, and that sort of gives us a lot of new opportunities, or a lot of new possibilities that we didn't have before. And it's not that we were limited on environments. I heard a speaker earlier today mentioned that they have 13 environments. We have at the moment 40 static environments. Where I came from before, 40 environments is a lot. But still, in the way we'd like to work, with the test we like to run, continuous release, basically ending up with each developer has his own environment is not really enough. Back to this release cycle. The core processes of, because I respect all these environments, and that's also in Devops, all these tools and all the things you can do with them, but you still have to have processes to be able to use them. It's not enough that you have ticket guys that are good at configuring and coding on them. We do 3 things to be able to release often. First of all, we have product management, and what they do is that they define which areas in the platform or in development that has the highest risk and where we should put most of our effort in testing when releasing. They also put the level of insecurity that we will accept when we go releasing, and that's their only role. So what is it that it's been testing, and what should the quality be? Then we have another team doing, and all these teams work with the full stack teams. So they don't necessarily do it themselves, but they sort of facilitate that things go on. Then we have a test execution team. They work on how we do testing. And in the beginning, we had sort of 2 different testings. We were talking about verification and validation. And verification was the vendors test, and we as a customer mostly did not know what they were doing. And then we had a validation, which was sort of a UAT, which was product management's test of the system. We sort of stretched that, and now we look at test as a generic thing. So everything we do, from code analysis to regression test, is considered testing, and all of it defines the level of security we have when we release. So these guys define how we test. They define how we automate test. If there's a manual test, they execute it if it's outside the teams. And they define the regression, and then they are responsible for the test environments. And then we have a release management group, and that's the group that is responsible for bringing the code into production. That means bringing it into the production environment. It also means bringing it to the business, making sure that that education is done on the caseworkers, that there is guidelines for how they should work and stuff like that. So basically everything. This has taken, to make this work, we have a number of iterations, and maybe you say that that's very easy, it can't be that tough, but actually we have been redoing this setup, I think 3 times, and it has taken us as long as the technical setup for testing has taken. So it's more than 6 months. This is how we define our test coverage. Sorry for it, but that's what we call it. This is our high level business requirements, and those we call the BAF map. Those we break down into, this is basically in safe it would be capabilities. We break them down into features, and then we say how much test are we doing from a global perspective on each of the features, and that gives us a sort of a test coverage. Then the business defines what is the ambition on quality, how good should we be, and there is a gap, and that's, I think, from where we are, there is a gap. We are sort of getting there, so it's a process, but we have some things to do up here, and this is put back in the backlog and developed, and that is what by in this month should give us, or maybe, but it's a continuous process. We're getting better and better. We have better and better quality. That's the vision. But the intention is we by February should be good enough to accept that we can release all the time, and then you have a continuous delivery. Also, again, this is very simple. We've been working for months to getting this right. Now, why do we want to continue? Why do we want to deploy continuously? There is no requirements from the business to release all the time. So basically, they see the project as going in 3 phases, and they would be fine with 3 releases. The first release we ended up being finished with in April 17. And then we said, fine, they've been working on it, they have done some verification. We haven't done very much user acceptance testing. And then we started on doing that. And I think many projects see that faults were piling up. And we had 3 months of nightmare, where we went from having a few faults to having 1,000 faults. And then we sort of got over the hill, and we ended up being in production 1 month late. But at the time we said, that's not ever going to happen again, we're not going to do that. So we did a lot to improve it to the next release, which were in this year. And it has been a lot better, but still we have a lot of testing outside the teams. And the end result is that we took all testing and put it back into the to the teams. So besides what you could call smoke test, which is done in the technical teams, and that's primarily to ensure that you have a quality in the solution that won't kill production, but all other tests are done in the full stack teams. So that would definitely be the recommendation. I've been working on as one of the advantages here is that we have both the product owners and the developers in the same organization. They don't have the same manager, but I, doing the development, and the product owner are we're very close and are very synchronized on it. So if that's the situation, then you should do full stack teams. It gives you a lot of I think it gives you better quality because people are talking together. It also makes continuous deployment possible. Without it, it's very difficult. Where I came from, we had the product owners were sitting in another division, so the possibility of having them included in the same teams was very difficult. And we are also at that point, as we also had this UAT where things were climbing up, and it seems to be an endless process, and we were always delayed. So full stack teams, I think, is very important. It means that all the things that you have been hearing in the two speakers before me has to work. If that's not the case, then you can't do this. And when we started, we had nothing. We didn't have a platform, so being able to release continuously was not an option because the production platform were not working, and therefore it took us sort of a year to get to that point. Back to the why do we do it? We do it because it has some good effects on the teams. It gives them incentive to be able to drop code continuously, which means that they have to work on the whole development process all the time. It means that they don't have too much work in progress in the team. It means that it forces them to find faults early and sort of work in Kanban. And all of this, I think, is very important to be able to improve quality, to be able to release continuously, and also I think it's very important because it maximizes your development machine, so it makes them work faster, and that is. These things are the real drivers for us, not so much that there's a business requirement for being able to release all the time. All this here took place in the ministry in what we call the ECI, the Implementation Center for Debt Collection, and that's the process we've been talking about. Here, last, just a few words on where we are in cooperation with Skat, and that's in the organization that we called UFO. Skat has had a similar project. They are working on an infrastructure where they are exposing these services in the infinitive loop of Devops, including Docker, and we are going to integrate to that. The history so far has been this. They started on building this, and then they worked with some of the internal projects here at eCapital and Telefonen, which is this is a very small project. This is a little bit bigger, but internally developed in Skat IT. This is the real estate evaluation project. They are doing a bit on their own, they're not necessarily integrated to this. We have then started integrating to some of this, not all of it, but we are converting to their Jira Confluence. We are using their GitHub. We are using their App Dynamics, and we have plans to migrate to their Jenkins. And the purpose of this is that if we sort of, and that's sort of also the conclusion with the other speakers, that we would like to get a generic environment, a generic system support, which we can use for all the projects we are going to have, and we're going to have quite a few in the future. And when we have standardized it, it will enable us to have a choice when the present contract we have with the company in the present setup, but also in other projects, whether we should do in-house hosting, outsource it to it, whether we should work with partners, or whether we should do cloud computing. And we are actually doing a bit of cloud computing in the real estate evaluation center. They are all production is running in Amazon. So we are going that way as well. This is a slide that's stolen from the CEO. There's no CIO in the info. From the CEO, and this is the focus we have right now on what we are doing. First of all, we are working on being able to finance what we do in the future, and we are talking very much to the finance ministry in this. The intention is that we would like to have funds for at least a number of years. So basically meaning that we would be constantly on the finance law. I don't know what it is. It's a tough discussion with the finance minister. So far we have had this, that has been public, we have had this 7 billion that we have used for, not necessarily used all of it, but for some of the projects. And that's what the funding that we work on now. The problems we have are massive. And if we are going to substitute in the next 10 years the around 90 mainframe systems we have, and I do think that is the case. Maybe you think that makes no sense, but there's reasons. We probably have to redo the whole business, and that will take quite a number of projects. Then there is the capabilities of being able to take decisions in a political system. Is also important. It is different, so it's important for us. Then we work a lot of having the organization upside down, and why that is because we would like to have the decision making down in the organization. I think that's really important. And this is also a little bit about being able to take control. Most public IT projects, we do have outsourced the control to the supplier you have. I don't think that's a good approach. I think you should take control. You cannot avoid having the responsibility. If it goes wrong, you will be blamed. So I would like to be in control of what we're doing globally in the whole organization. So having the organization upside down and having the real decision being taken in the bottom of decisions, in the bottom of the organization, I think is really key to what we're doing. Then we would be able to work on sourcing, so we can have options of how we do things. Then also, and that's this is the presentation from the CEO, so very much in focus is SAFE and Devops. I think I have a slide on SAFE. Where we're going with SAFE is that we're working full SAFE in two main projects. In EASY, which were the project I was talking about, and we're also working full safe in ECI. This is depth-relation, this is property evaluation. And those two teams, we have in the neighborhood of 50 development teams. So close to 500 people. We are 350 in depth-relation. And this this means that we were basically working here in the program level and also on the portfolio level. We are just introducing now the large solutions part of SAFE, which will give us a full SAFE, and this is where we are aiming. So I think that if we talk again in a year, we will have more than 80 projects. As first of all, there is ICT, which is also a very big project. When they start development, they will be around 500. And then we have this, which is a new project. I call it BCO. I won't explain to you what it is, because it's not. We are right now in the analytics space, not sure what its scope exactly will be, but there will come a new project, and that will also, as I see it, because it's some of the more heavier area within tax, be a big project. So probably also around in the end 500. So I think that 80 teams is a little bit conservative. But anyway, it will be big. Andreas Bergman, who is the CEO, is on the back of his office. He has stated portfolio board, so it will also be used for budgeting and controlling features, being able to control the finance. So SAFE will be very important for us. That was my last slide. This is not something, I think that this is something that will not stop us. We have moved tremendously fast for the last 1.5 years. We are gone from zero to being one of the top 5 SAFE implementations in Denmark, and also creating private interest from people who would like to have me to talk to them. So that's, I think it's very nice. So I'm very happy about that. But we're not quite there yet, and actually I think you will never get there. There is no end state. We can continue to improve on this. But the intention is that we would like to create a development muscle which is sort of stable. So we would like to keep also the suppliers we have and move the projects to the development organization, and not creating a development organization around projects. And I think that's the most important. Questions?
Yep. Can you put a few words on how exactly you incorporate the concept of compliance in your Devops? I saw earlier that you defined a project team, management team.
Yeah.
And my question is that the team that takes compliance into?
And what do you mean by compliance?
So let's say you are a team working on a product that has to be compliant with the GDPR regulation.
Yeah.
If you stitch together a set of
actually, we have full stack teams, and KA, which is the state attorney, are sitting in teams. So that's the compliance towards legality. So if there is if there is compliance to legislation, which is always the case, then the lawyers are actually sitting in teams. They also have to improve or approve what we are doing, so they're also part of testing, a very active part of testing. If you take the high level, this what we call the bath, which is high level requirements. They are broken down into capabilities, and all the capabilities also, of course, has acceptance criteria, which also applies to legislation or to business requirements. And when we do test, we ensure that that we meet the requirements. And by the way, there's a full track. So we have full traceabilities from capabilities to features, to user stories, to what is actually done in code in the platform. So if we get back and says we would like to change this, there's a change in the legislation. We can actually go out and say it's this area complies to this feature, to that we these user stories, and this is in this part of the code. So there's nothing wrong with documentation. That has been a requirement from the start.